All right. Good evening, everybody. If you can just give me a thumbs up, let me know you can hear me okay. We'll start there. And while you're giving me a sound check, okay, I'll be right back. All right. Thank you for the official sound check, Marisa. I appreciate it. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. And keeping the palms joined. All right. And we can put the palms down. So good evening, everybody. Welcome to Intro to Buddhism. My name is Jeff. You'll be stuck with me for the next 45 minutes or so. I always like to start with some questions, just to give people a chance to communicate, and also an opportunity for people who will join the meditation to show up. But once in a while, we did it Saturday, and I think I'll do it again now. Is what questions do you have? I know we do the meditation and then I open up to questions after, but instead of asking you a question, what questions do you have for me around meditation, Buddhist practice, really anything? So what's on your mind at the moment that you would like to know? And we'll take a few moments before we start the meditation for you to share your questions. While the questions are coming in, I'll just share briefly last night, and I do really not nearly as much as I used to with the college group. They've really evolved on their own quite well. And so I'm much more of kind of an advisor role, and I do a couple classes at the start of the semester, and I did one last night, but the topic was non-self, and it was really great discussion, really questions, a lot around planning. And I think for any stage in your life, whether you're a college kid or not, one of the kids was talking about their 7-year plan, and my response was, it's great that we have a 7-year plan, but we haven't even figured out what we're having for lunch tomorrow or how that's all going to work out. And so this idea of trying to control the future, control situations really comes up, and it really all ties into the practice of non-self, of going beyond everything that we want. So just these ideas of planning everything, as opposed to just working on being kind in each moment, and still having goals and things you want to accomplish and working towards them, but understanding that everything you're working towards really only comes from one moment at a time. So, all right. So again, questions. If you're just joining us, I've thrown it all to you all instead of me asking you a question. Feel free to chime in with whatever questions you may have. And we'll take those for a few moments before we start meditation. Let's see. How do you handle the emotional ups and downs that happen for no reason at all? Some days one feels down, some days up, and it seems I just wake up like that. So when I read questions, and it's different when you're in person because you don't have the luxury of being able to see people and connect to that way. But when I read questions, I look at the words, and what you say here is that the emotional ups and downs happen for no reason at all. And that's not true. If you really think about it, your emotional ups and downs are happening. And the reason is they're happening is the inability to control our mind and our thoughts. So there's a great Buddhist text called the Dhammapada. And the first line in the text is, the mind is the forerunner of all evil. So evil is, I think, a interesting word in at least the English language, but that's how the line gets translated into English typically. And so when you say the ups and downs that happen for no reason at all, the reason the ups and downs are happening is because the mind is all over the place. That's the first thing to understand. There's a lot going on in your question, and I can break that down in a minute, but it's important to understand that there is a reason it's happening, and it's because of our thoughts. And so the important part about handling the ups and downs, as you say, is to recognize as the Buddha taught, the impermanence of them. So with every up, there will be a down. With every down, there will be an up. And our entire lives are going to be filled with kind of this roller coaster ride of emotions. So for me, one great way to handle them is to understand that these emotions will come and go. They're not permanent, which is a good thing. If they were permanent and you were in a bad mood, that would really suck, because that would mean you're stuck in a bad mood forever. The disappointing part about the impermanence is that when you're in a good mood, we recognize it also will fade away. So I think handling them is just embracing the reality that our life is going to be like a roller coaster ride, with emotional ups and downs caused by your thoughts and your reaction to what's going on around you. The second part of your question, or the sentence says, some days one feels down, some days up, and it seems I just wake up like that. Well, it seems that way. But again, it only seems that way because most people don't have the ability to really train the mind and stay present and control your thoughts. So when you wake up, you're not in a bad mood because you woke up. You're in a bad mood because of what you're focused on, because of what you're thinking, because of what your thoughts go to. So if you feel down when you wake up, it's because of where your mind is. What this really is teaching us is that you have control over your emotions. You have control, or the ability to control your emotions. You have the ability to control your ups and downs. You have the ability to control whether your days feel good or bad. So really, all of the control and the power is yours. Nobody else can dictate or determine your good day or bad day. But I think it's important to honestly look at and recognize that when you feel down, it is simply for the reason that that's where your mind is. So try to fixate the mind in a settled, calm, or I should say two things. One, if you can, One alternative is to fixate the mind on happy, pleasant thoughts, emotions, feelings. Ultimately, the practice is to just abide in the present moment, and therefore we're not wrapped up in this, dualistic world of good and bad, and good moods and bad moods. So, hope that's helpful. So, Lisa, next question. I see that, and I'll come back to that question now, because I want to take a little while to dive into as well. But I wanted to kind of get started. And then after meditation, Lisa, I'll address the question you share. And Ocean Potion, good. I'm glad that's helpful. It's actually really quite liberating to know that you have complete control, the ability to control all of your moods. That nobody else is in control of that but you. Now the challenge is, which is really Lisa's question, is how do you do that? And one way is to meditate. So that's what we're going to do. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You won't float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Okay, don't judge your practice. You don't ask yourself, is it working or not working? Am I doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, outside the room, wherever you are. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And the practice is learning to be quiet and still within all the chaos. So posture, just want to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders, hands are on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. I'll guide us as we begin, and we will settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually, you'll settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Knowing throughout the practice, you'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. These are not distractions, not disruptions. Simply what's happening around us as we sit. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Gently guide the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Lost in thought, return to breath. Letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments from the practice, just sitting, breathing. keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation, yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing, breathing in, follow breath in, breathing out, follow breath out. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe, knowing with each breath there's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask us how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samutpata, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being no different than any one of us who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where we come from or what we believe in, where we think we're going, our whole life is filled with things that happen. We react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. For most of us, the way we responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap to the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. So the questions, even just the 2 questions tonight that came up, and looking at the question, what practices do you use in your daily life to bring yourself back into the moment when you notice you're focusing on the past, the future, etc.? This. The more you practice this, well, let me give you this example. So years ago, where was I? It was at a, well, it doesn't matter where it was, but I used to always lead really long meditations. And then I got invited to a specific spot and I was asked to lead a very short meditation. And so I led about a 5-minute meditation practice. And afterwards, somebody raised their hand and they shared that they were an avid bike rider, and they would go on hours, a few hours of riding, and that was their kind of escape and their way to calm down and let things go, they said. And then the person got into meditation and they found that the meditation practice was very similar for them to the feeling they had when they were riding the bike. And biking, swimming, running, all of these activities are very meditative if you allow yourself to stay present. So this individual, after I led the 5-minute meditation, said that they were amazed at how quickly, after just 5 minutes, they felt the same as when they would do a 40-minute meditation or a 3-hour bike ride. And what this illustrates is it's not about how long your meditative practice is. It's really about how well do we come back to this moment. So looking at the question, Lisa, of what practices do you use in your daily life to bring yourself back into the moment when you notice you are focusing on the past, the future, etc. my suggestion is to really cultivate a very deep, consistent meditation practice to where then, if you were sitting for 2 hours or 30 minutes or 5 minutes or 3 breaths, it's all the same thing. So all you have to do, guys, breath in, breath out. And there you go. That's it. Ultimately, you don't even need to take that breath. I mean, I suggest breathing, it'll keep you alive. But I understand the nature of the question, and it very much it reminds me of the metaphor I always use where, if we have a headache, we take Advil, and for example, and we hope the headache goes away. Next day we have a headache again, we take more Advil, hope the headache goes away. So we spend forever taking Advil to get rid of the headache instead of looking at what's causing the headache. And if we can fix that, then we don't need to take Advil anymore. Well, what I'm describing with this question around the meditation practice is, instead of looking for what other tricks or cues or things do I need to come back to the present moment, with meditation, you have your breath, and that's all you need. So you really don't need anything else. And the more you practice this, the easier it becomes to just kind of snap your fingers, just like boom, in that moment, there you are. That's it. Often I find that techniques or different things that people teach, they in and of themselves are complicated and stressful. Just focusing on your breath is very simple and free and always available. So I hope that's helpful, Lisa. Questions? All right. If time allows, will you please share the snail story? Yes. Appreciate the advice. Good. Glad it's helpful, Lisa. The snail story. So, which is funny because the other day I really wanted to move a snail. I was so convinced that I needed to move that snail. I didn't. But so for those who've never heard it, when I was a kid, I was, and it would rain a lot, or when it would rain, the snails would come out. And I used to step on a lot of snails. 10-year-old kid stomping on snails. I didn't think anything of it. And fast forward many years later, I got into Buddhist practice, and this was 2003, and then probably, 2004, 2005. I heard a teaching on, non-harming and having compassion and looking at our actions and things like that. And one day I was sitting there at temple, and all of a sudden it hit me, and I was like, oh my, I used to kill so many snails. And I started to feel really bad, really guilty. Felt a lot of just kind of remorse and shame for all these snails that were doing nothing but just being alive, and I would stomp on them. So I went on this kind of what I call a Save the Snail crusade or campaign. And I got on this big kick where I was trying to save all the snails. And every time I would see snails, or when it would rain and the snails would come out, I'd move them everywhere. And, I would try to figure out strategically where to place them on the ground and things like that. And so as I'm picking up and moving these snails off the sidewalk, I was feeling really good about myself, thinking yes, yay me, look, I saved a snail. And that went on for a while, I don't know, a year or two, something like that. And then one day I heard another teaching or just had another realization from something I'd learned. I don't know what it was. And all of a sudden I realized, like, oh my, what an idiot you are. Like, all this time I was saving the snails, I actually thought I was saving them. But in reality, I was just moving them. And it's not like I stuck around for the next 30 minutes or 3 days to see what happened to them. I was so convinced that because I moved them off of the sidewalk and onto the grass that I saved their life. When in fact, I really had no idea what happened to them. And I started to ponder that, and I realized, okay, in a practical sense, if I'm walking on the sidewalk, I see the snails. I can move, I could step on them, I could step around them. So my logic was, well, if I take them off the sidewalk and I put them in the grass, then they're going to be safe. Well, one, people walk on the grass also. And in fact, if they're in the grass, you can't see them. So there's potentially a greater likelihood that they'll get stepped on when they're in the grass versus on the sidewalk where people can actually see them and choose to step on them or not. The other thing is, by moving them, I'm making a really big assumption, and I'm kind of meddling in their lives by thinking I know what's best for them, right? So here's this little snail kind of cruising along, going this way. I pick up the snail and I put the snail 10 feet back the other way in the grass. Now, what if the snail had somewhere to go this way, over here, that way? And I just moved the snail 10 feet that way. Now the snail who went all the way over here has to go back again. And now on their long trek to go back to where they just were, maybe they'll get stepped on. Or if I'd left them alone, maybe they would be fine. Ultimately, I have no idea what is best for them. No matter how many times I spin it in my head and I try to rationalize or justify, I have no idea what's best for the snail. So then the question became, well, what do I do now? So when I see snails, I join palms. I'm reminded of all the snails that I used to slaughter. I say my omitofos. It's sending compassion, love, and I leave them alone. And I don't mess with them anymore. I don't pretend to know what's best for them. Right? And, I get it. People can debate all day long. But the reality is you don't know what's best for the snail. No matter how much you think you do. Unless you're going to sit by that snail's side for the rest of their life and your life, you have no idea what their outcome is going to be. In fact, it's kind of an arrogant, egotistical thing to say, well, I'm going to move this snail over here and I'm going to save this snail and I'm going to go on my way, thinking that we did what's best for them. We have no idea. So that's the snail story. Hope that's helpful, Marisa, for you or anyone. All right. Good. Samir, do you think that the practice of meditation helps us to experience feelings rather than numb and suppress them? I think so. Again, to reference last night with the college kids, it's great because, I led the meditation with them a little different than I normally do, and for them, and I had them all just because they're stuck staring at screens all day long, and they tend to do their meditation staring at the screen on Zoom with 50 people there. So I had them all just get up and leave the screen and go find a wall and stare at their wall. And the Zen practice is eyes open at a wall. And so I had them go do that. And then when they came back and I asked them what their experience was like, and one of the kids said, well, for a while, I had a hard time doing the meditation. I was just staring at the wall. And then I went into my talk, how I was staring at the wall, not meditation, and how what you think is meditation might not be it. that ultimately meditation is a concentration and focus on the present moment and an awareness of the present moment. So to your question, do you think the practice of meditation helps us to experience feelings rather than numb and suppress them? Absolutely. If you look at the Eightfold Path, views, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. Mindfulness is just the most overused, overplayed word, especially in Western culture, I think. Everyone wants to be more mindful. I would ask people, do you practice meditation or Buddha, are you into Buddhism or meditation? No, I practice mindfulness. It's like, well, what does that even mean? Right? Can we be aware, mindful of thoughts, words, actions, feelings, sensations, what's occurring in each moment? Right? The practice the mistake I feel people often make with practice of meditation is they use it as an escape to run away from or suppress, say, these negative emotions or feelings. Where, to me, meditation and the mindfulness practice is to be aware of them as they arise, recognize the impermanence of them, as I talked about at the beginning tonight, and let them pass. Ultimately, they just rise and fall, come and go. That's what happens with our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions. Right? They're like airplanes that just get louder and louder as they arise, arrive directly above your head, and then quieter and quieter as they move further away from you. So the thoughts, the emotions, the feelings, it's the same thing. And I believe the meditation practice helps us become aware of that. So hope that's helpful, Samir. Thank you. I needed the reminder. Yes, I really appreciate that story. Good. Yeah, the snail story is, it's really a lot about control. I'm sure none of you here try to control people or places or things or anything like that. But, I find that surrendering to the present moment and working on abandoning this desire to try to control everything and everyone is very liberating. That was a very big, important piece of Buddhist teachings that really helped me a lot, was surrendering to life as it is, as opposed to always trying to create and plan and build this perfect life. Because I spent way too many years doing that. And all I really did was, hurt people, hurt myself, in this illusion of trying to create something so wonderful. There was so much ego and pride involved that just screwed everything up. So when you surrender to life as it is, and just focus on what are my actions? What do I think? What do I say? And what do I do? This is what I work on, and this is so difficult. This is not easy. But hope that's helpful. Any other questions? I'm going to end a little early tonight anyways, but all right. How do you do that in the work context? Relinquish control over others' work to achieve desired outcomes. Yeah, it's a good question. And I want to be very clear that, again, I know I'm using these examples a lot, but I just met with them last night, and it's I just think so applicable to what we're talking about right here, that, planning the next 7 years of your life and then learning about Buddhist teachings doesn't mean you just call your parents one day or professors and say, you know what, I'm Buddhist now, I'm just going to drop out. That's not what it's about. At the same time, in the workplace, you don't just say, well, I'm Buddhist, so, I don't care what happens. And when you look at the Buddhist teachings on right effort, when it applies to, say, the work setting, right? work hard at what you do. If you oversee people, if you're the boss, if you have people who work for you, however you want to call it, um, work hard, be diligent, and train others to do the same. Now, if you have people that work for you and they're not doing their jobs, it's not. It's not the Buddhist response isn't, well, that's okay. I'm just going to leave you alone and everything is going to be miserable. No, there's a job to do, and it should get done. But this desire to try to control everyone and everything is really toxic. You know, I've spent majority of my life trying to motivate and inspire people. And what I've learned through this practice is to do the same thing, but I'm not attached to the outcome. Meaning, I can show up to everything I do and try to motivate and inspire people to be kind and do good things. But whether they do it or not, that's on them. Now, in a work setting, when it applies back to your own livelihood, the livelihood of others, then yes, it's not going to be beneficial if you're trying to motivate someone to do good work and they don't do it and it's impacting your company or your job. Then maybe it's time to find somebody else to do that job. So relinquishing control doesn't mean you stop caring about doing a good job. It just means that you can't control other people. And if other people aren't doing the job that they need to be doing to keep that job, then maybe they need to be replaced. But this kind of idea that we are controlling them, I don't think is healthy. If you have a desired outcome with an organization or a goal, and you have a desired outcome, that's great. Work towards that goal. But work towards it without this overwhelming sense of attachment and greed and control. So I don't know if that's helpful, but all right. Anything else before we close? All right. So we'll join palms. We'll do a transfer of merit. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained be transferred to those who need it most. So a few quick announcements. Thanks all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up 14 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice. Those of us who lead, we're not monks or nuns or gurus or masters or teachers. We're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Every night we have different practices going on. Teenage group, college group, recovery groups for those battling addiction. Monday through Friday we sit. A year ago we closed the temple for what initially we thought would be 2 weeks, and here we are a year later still closed. So it's just we don't feel it's near safe to open, and so the temple and Buddha for You will stay closed until we feel that it's okay to bring people together again. Yeah, that's about it. We have a couple of book studies going on, 2 Saturdays a month. Pristine Mind, great text by Orjin Chong Rinpoche. Marisa leads that. And then Monday nights, the 22nd. So this next coming Monday, we'll start. It's called Zen Seeds. It's a great text. Beautiful Buddhist nun, great Zen teacher. That's her book. Both books are available. Buddha for You, like I said, is closed, but the website has an online store, so you can get anything you need there. Other than that, 2 new programs coming up. I'll announce a very cool Knit and Sit. We'll be making beanies for the homeless. and the other one is a Tonglen practice that we will be starting coming up here not too far off on Sunday evenings. So I'll share more info on that as we get closer. So thanks all for being here. Please stay home as much as you can. Wear a mask. Do your best to keep people safe and not do anything to put anyone in a position of being harmed. So thank you all.